this video, we're going to talk about putting supply and demand together. So we have done demand, which you have seen a downward sloping demand curve. And we have done supply, where you have seen an upward sloping supply curve. And so now we're going to put those two together on the same graph, and we're going to watch those interact in a market. So when we combine supply and demand, the price is going to be determined, and it is the market that determines the price. So a lot of times we like to think that the supplier sets the price, because when we walk into Walmart, we see that they already have prices set. But if you think about what happens if you don't purchase the goods that Walmart is providing at the prices that they're asking. So let's say that you walk in, there's an item in Walmart, and nobody will buy it because they think the price is too high. So they walk out of Walmart and they leave that item on the shelf. In a couple of days or maybe a week or two, what is going to happen to the price of that product? Walmart is probably going to put it on sale. So in a week or two, they've put that item on sale. You walk into Walmart and you still think the price is too high and you're not willing to purchase that item, then they're going to put it on clearance. They're going to drop that price even farther, trying to get more demand for the product, more quantity demanded for the product. And they drop that price to a point where they're hoping they're still going to make a profit. Sometimes they'll take a loss if they believe it'll bring people into the store to buy other things. But the price continues to fall until at some point they decide they're no longer going to carry that item. So even though when you walk into Walmart, you think that Walmart sets the price, you as the consumer, the demander, actually help set the price. It is the interaction of you, the consumer, the demander, along with Walmart, the supplier, your interaction that sets the price. Because if the price is too high, you won't purchase it and they will continue to drop it. So it is this interaction between supply and demand in a market that is going to set a price. And we're going to watch that and graph it. So when we combine the demand relationship between price and quantity demanded and the supply relationship between price and quantity demanded, that's a fancy way of saying we're going to put supply and demand together on one graph instead of having two graphs for it. So what you're going to do at this point is you are going to stop the video and you are going to graph this. Now, this part on the right-hand side of the video is just going to give you information, all right? The best thing for you to do is to go ahead and label, I'm going to do this with you a bit, let's see if you can see my board here, which way I need to go. So you should have your graph paper that looks like this, and this is going to be the quantity and demanded of bicycles. You will have your prices here. You're going to graph, notice these numbers are the same numbers that you've seen before. You've already graphed this demand curve and you've already graphed this supply curve. We just now have to put them together on a graph. So you're going to graph from $140 up to $300 on this axis, that's price. And you're going to graph from 1 to 18 on your horizontal axis, that is your quantity. And what you want to do is you want to graph all of the demand first. So you want to do 140 and 18, 160 and 14, 180 and 11, and then go ahead and draw your demand curve. Then you'll ignore the quantity demanded and you'll graph $140 and 1, $160 and 4, $180 and 11, and you will graph your supply curve like this. So it will look, you will end up with, let me get in the camera here somehow, some way. You will end up with a curve that looks something like, I'm struggling in the camera. You're going to end up with an X, a supply and demand curve on the same graph. So pause the video now and take the time to graph this curve. Okay, so Once you have finished graphing the curve, you should see that your graph is going to intersect right here. This is your equilibrium, and you want to label that equilibrium. So the center, the X, I'm going to call that the happy place. Okay, the happy place is equilibrium. It is where quantity supplied and quantity demanded are equal. And you should see that the quantity at which they are equal, you can look on your graph right here. There is quantity demanded is 9 and quantity supplied is 9. So you should have at 9 bicycles, that is your equilibrium quantity. So you have an equilibrium quantity of 9 bicycles, right? Then you should notice that your equilibrium price, if 9 is the equilibrium, then the price at which we are equal is $200. So $200 is your equilibrium price. So I want for you to label where they meet in the middle of the X, the happy place, right here. Label that equilibrium. You're going to label 9 the equilibrium quantity, and you're going to label, it's hard to see backwards, you're going to label $200 the equilibrium price. Okay, so you should have a graph that looks like this. Double check to make sure that you have both axes labeled. Your y-axis should be labeled price. Your x-axis should be labeled quantity. You should have equilibrium, equilibrium price, and equilibrium quantity labeled. So what that's saying is that in this market for bicycles, that everybody is going to be happy. All the suppliers and all the demanders are going to be happy when we are at equilibrium at $200. That 9 million, or whatever I think it was 9 million, bicycles will be sold if the price of a bicycle is $200. So what does the rest of this graph tell us? There's more information that's provided on here. And so one of the first things it tells us is where there is going to be a shortage, all right? So a shortage is if quantity demanded is greater than the quantity supplied. So if we're looking for quantity demanded is greater than quantity supplied, and we're looking on our graph here, let me change colors. So if this in the center is equilibrium, right here is our equilibrium, right? When we go to any price below $200, the quantity demanded increases greater than 9. And the quantity supplied decreases less than 9. So what this means is that at any price below $200, your quantity demanded is going to be greater than your quantity supplied. So for instance, at $140, you'll have 18 demanded, but only 1 supplied. So you will be short 17. So anywhere in this triangle down here, we call that a shortage because the quantity demanded below that price of 200 is going to be, the quantity demanded will be greater than the quantity supplied. So if there's more demand than there is supply, then that means that we have a shortage of that good or service. All right, the opposite of that would be a surplus. The surplus is when you have too much supply. There's a bunch of stuff sitting around in warehouses. They have too many stores of things that are going on. And so surplus is when you raise the price above the equilibrium price, it's going to make the quantities supplied greater than the equilibrium quantity and the quantities demanded less than the equilibrium quantity. So if we have more quantity supplied than we do quantity demanded, we have a surplus of goods and services. And so in this area here, this triangle, we have a surplus of goods and services. Now we can see that on our table. So I'm going to go back to where I had the table here. So if you notice that our equilibrium price is $200, if we lower the price to $180, then there will be 11 bicycles demanded, but only 7 supplied. So we have a shortage of 4 bicycles. Okay. If we have a shortage, we would need to raise the price back up to 200 to eliminate that shortage. If we have lowered the price to $160, then that means we have 14 demanded and only 4 supplied, and so we have a shortage of 10 bicycles. On the opposite side is if we raise our price to, let's say, $260. So we raise our price to $260. We will then have a quantity demanded of 3 bicycles and a quantity supplied of 15. So we have a surplus of 12. When these things happen, this is probably what you're the most familiar with, because you know that when you walk into a store in September and they have extra bathing suits left over, they are going to decrease the price. The price is going to have to fall in order to get rid of that surplus of bathing suits that they have left over after the summer. Okay, so when we think of sales in stores, this is what's actually happening is the store has a surplus of some good or service, and they have to drop the price so that to increase the demand to be able to get somewhere to this equilibrium price. All right, so we've seen shortage and surplus. We just said that our equilibrium price is the price at which quantity supplied and quantity demanded are equal. So that would be $200 on our chart. And that the equilibrium quantity is 9 bicycles, because that is the quantity at which quantity demanded and quantity supplied are equal. And we call that market equilibrium. Price is our function that is going to alleviate surpluses and shortages. So basically it's saying if we raise the price, we will eliminate a shortage, and if we lower a price, we will eliminate a surplus, so long as we get back to equilibrium price. We've already talked about the markets. Another word for this market clearing price, this term right here, will be the price for which quantity supplied equals quantity demanded. All that's saying is we just said the price at which quantity supplied equals the quantity demanded is called the equilibrium price. So market clearing price is just another word for the EP, or the equilibrium price. So the equilibrium price, market clearing price, those terms are used interchangeably. It basically means that everything that is produced is also sold, so every good clears the market is the way that we want to. All right, then we've got, all right, we've already graphed this chart. You already took your time and did that. So we saw our demand curve, supply curve, equilibrium price, equilibrium quantity, area of shortage, and area of surplus. You don't have to label where prices will rise and where prices will fall. Prices are going to rise if you're in a shortage area, and prices are going to fall if you're in a surplus area. But check your graph now and make sure that you have all of those labeled correctly. All right, we're going to stop here, and I'm going to create a new video that's going to show you how to shift these curves and what's going to happen to your equilibrium price and your equilibrium quantity when you do that.